The city of Prague is still burning when the signal finds them. Not a message, not a transmission, not anything that travels through wire or air or any medium that has a name in the vocabulary of the people receiving it. It arrives the way a memory arrives, already inside, already present, with no detectable moment of entry. One instant it is not there. The next it simply is settled into the architecture of two minds like it was always supposed to be there, like a key discovering the lock it was cut for. Malik wakes up on the floor of an abandoned textile warehouse on the eastern edge of Prague, 3 hours after the bridge, and knows something is different before he opens his eyes. The hum is back, not the facility's hum. That was external, mechanical, something that happened to him. This is internal, resident, sitting in his chest with the particular permanence of something that has moved in and has no intention of leaving. He lies still for a moment, cataloging it the way you catalog pain to determine whether it is the dangerous kind, and concludes that it is not pain at all. It is awareness. He opens his eyes. Sujin is sitting upright against the far wall, knees drawn to her chest, watching him with an expression that tells him she felt the moment he woke up before he moved a muscle. "You felt it too," he says. It is not a question. She nods once. "Since the bridge," she says. It has not stopped. Across the warehouse, Marcus is awake and already working. 3 screens open simultaneously, his cracked glasses replaced with a spare pair that sits slightly crooked on his face. Amara is standing at the single window that faces the street, watching the approach roads with the focused stillness of someone who has decided that being caught sleeping is not an option she is willing to entertain again. Dr. Chun is not in the warehouse. Her absence arrives in the room the way important absences always do. Not announced, not dramatic, simply present, a shape in the air where a person used to be. Malik sits up. Amara turns from the window without being asked. "She left 2 hours ago," Amara says. "Said she needed medical supplies. She has not come back." The silence that follows is the kind that does its own thinking. Marcus pulls up the facility schematics on his center screen. His jaw tightens. Someone accessed the secondary network node 17 minutes after the core collapsed, he says. From inside the facility. Someone who was already underground when it happened. Malik looks at the empty space where Dr. Chin's jacket was folded on the floor beside the east wall. Someone who knew the secondary node existed, Sujin says quietly. She stands. The movement is different from before, more deliberate, more certain, as if the connection to the core has recalibrated something in her relationship to her own body. Marcus watches her stand and says nothing, but his eyes track the quality of the movement and register what they find there. Malik is already moving toward the door. "Where are you going?" Amara asks. "To find her," he says. Before they do, the streets of Prague in the hours before dawn carry the particular quality of a city that has not yet decided whether last night was a dream. Power is intermittent, some blocks fully lit, others dark, the grid still reasserting itself after the cascade failure that rippled outward from a bridge. Emergency vehicles are everywhere and going in multiple directions simultaneously, their sirens creating overlapping rhythms that cancel each other out in certain intersections, leaving pockets of strange silence in the middle of organized chaos. Malik moves through it the way water moves through rock, finding the path of least resistance, present and gone before anyone has time to register either. Sujin is beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touch. They have not discussed moving together. They simply are. The connection between them is not telepathy. It is more precise than that and less dramatic. It is the awareness of a shared frequency, the knowledge at any given moment of the other's direction and intention and emotional state, in the same way you are always aware of your own breathing without consciously attending to it. It requires no effort. It cannot be turned off. Malik is not certain yet whether this is a gift or a mark. He suspects it is both. They find Dr. Chun in a shuttered pharmacy 3 blocks south of the warehouse. She is not alone. Through the pharmacy window, Malik can see her standing at the back counter, speaking to a man he has never seen, tall, broad, wearing civilian clothes that sit wrong on a body clearly accustomed to something more tactical, the particular tell of a soldier in borrowed clothes. The conversation is not heated. It is not clandestine. It is businesslike in the way that conversations are businesslike when both parties have had this conversation before, when the relationship it represents has history. Sujin puts her hand on Malik's arm before he reaches the door. "Wait," she says. He looks at her. She is watching Dr. Chen's hands. "Watch her hands," Sujin says. She is giving him something. She is right. Dr. Chen slides a thin drive across the counter. The man pockets it without looking at it, the reflex of someone who has received things this way many times before. He says something. Dr. Chen nods. He leaves through the back. Malik pushes open the pharmacy door. Dr. Chen does not flinch. She turns from the counter with the measured composure of someone who is expecting this moment and has been deciding for some time what she will say when it arrives. She looks at Malik first, then Sujin, and what passes across her face in that fraction of a second is not guilt and not defiance, but something older and more complicated than either, the expression of someone who has been carrying a weight so long they have forgotten what it felt like before it was there. "Sit down," she says. "Both of you. I will tell you everything. Not because you caught me. Because it is time." They sit. She tells them about Project Bridge. Not the version they know. The covert program, the separated siblings, the government overreach that Marcus pieced together from leaked documents over 18 months of obsessive reconstruction. She tells them the version underneath that version. The original architecture. The thing Project Bridge was actually built to do, which was never about national security and was never about the two children it separated and was never, not for a single day of its existence, about anything as small as government intelligence. Project Bridge, Dr. Chan says, was built to find the pairs. She says pairs the way a physicist says mass, a technical term with a weight of meaning compressed inside it that casual usage does not approach. Human consciousness, she continues, has a resonance frequency. Every mind vibrates at its own signature. In 99.9% of cases, those signatures are entirely individual. No two people in the same register, no overlap, no interference. But in rare cases, statistically, perhaps one pair per generation, two minds are born into adjacent frequencies. Close enough that proximity allows synchronization. Close enough that under the right conditions they can function as a single amplified signal rather than two separate ones. "You are not the first pair," she says. Malik goes very still. "There have been others," she says. 4 pairs in documented history. All identified, all separated at birth to prevent accidental synchronization before the program was ready to use them. All kept in proximity, different cities, different lives, but never more than a certain distance apart, so the connection could be activated when the time came. "You separated us," Sujin says. Her voice is very quiet, the quietest thing in a quiet room. Quiet in the way that things are quiet when they're deciding whether to become loud. "I documented you," Dr. Chun says. "I did not make the decision." "Who did?" Malik says. Dr. Chun looks at him steadily. She has been building to this answer for 20 years. It does not get easier for having been prepared. The architect did not build the program, she says. He inherited it. The program is older than him, older than the organization he represents. It was built by the people who built the architect, the ones who understood what a synchronized pair could do to a global network and decided that understanding was too valuable to leave in the hands of governments or corporations or any entity with a lifespan measured in decades. She pauses. When she continues, her voice is lower, as if the words themselves require less air to survive. The ones who built the cage, she says, are the ones who have been watching from the beginning. Not the architect, not his emissary, the secondary observer. The silence that follows his texture is not empty. It is full of everything each person in the room is doing with what they have just heard, rearranging the architecture of what they thought they understood and finding that the new shape is larger and more frightening than the old one. That signal on his screen, Malik says slowly, was not a threat to him, she says. It was a message to you. They have been waiting for a pair strong enough to hijack the core. You're the first, and now that you have done it, Now that you have proven what a synchronized pair can do to a global neural network, they're going to want to use you for what they originally built the cage for. What do they build it for? Sujin asks. Dr. Chen looks at her with something that is not quite guilt and not quite grief, but has elements of both and has been sitting in her chest for a very long time. There is another network, she says, older than the architects, deeper, built into infrastructure that predates the internet, predates digital communication, predates everything. Built in the 1950s by people who understood that consciousness was the only network that could not be hacked, regulated, or shut down. She looks down at her hands, a gesture that is as close to shame as her composure will allow. They call it the Foundation, she says, and it has been running continuously since 1953. Undetected, unmapped, and it is collapsing. Why? Marcus says from the doorway. None of them heard him arrive. Amara is behind him, one shoulder against the door frame, her face carrying the particular stillness of someone absorbing information and not yet deciding what to do with it. Because the pairs it was built on, Dr. Chan says, the 4 pairs before you, they burned out. The synchronization is not sustainable without an anchor, without something to ground the signal. One by one, over the decades, the previous pairs lost coherence, and the sections of the foundation they were sustaining went dark. She looks at Malik and Sujin, really looks at them. The way you look at something you have known the significance of for a very long time and have never been able to say aloud. You are the last pair, she says. There are no others. And if the foundation collapses completely before you anchor it, the network of human consciousness it has been sustaining, the one that has been quietly counterbalancing every authoritarian system, every surveillance architecture, every attempt to centralize human thought for the last 70 years, disappears. The room takes a moment to absorb the scale of what she has just said. It is a large scale. It does not fit comfortably inside a shuttered pharmacy on a side street in Prague in the gray hour before dawn. Amara speaks. Her voice is measured and precise and cuts straight to the thing nobody else has said yet. What happens to the people it has been sustaining? She says. Dr. Chen is quiet for 3 full seconds. They become available, she says, to whoever fills the vacuum first. Everyone in the room understands what that means. Nobody says it aloud, because saying it aloud would make it more real than any of them are ready for at this particular moment in a shuttered pharmacy in a city that is still counting its damages from last night. The understanding moves through the room like a change in air pressure, felt in the chest before it is processed by the mind, present in the body before it has words. Malik stands. Where's the Foundation's primary node? He asks. Dr. Chen looks up at him with an expression that tells him she has been dreading this question and has known it was coming since the moment she sat down. It is not a where, she says. It is a who. A pause that has the quality of a door opening onto a room nobody was prepared to find on the other side. The Foundation does not run on servers, she says. It never did. It runs on people. Specifically, it runs on the children. The ones who woke up last night, across continents, at the same moment. The infants, Sujin says. Her voice is barely above a breath. She already knew, Malik realizes. Not the details, but the shape of it. The frequency between them has been carrying something at its edges since they left the warehouse, and he understands now that what he was reading as unease was actually recognition. Her mind encountering something it had already partially mapped without understanding what it was mapping. Dr. Chen nods. They are the nodes, she says. They always have been. Every generation, new nodes are born into the network. They live their entire lives as ordinary people, never knowing what they are carrying. And when the pairs who anchor the network burn out, the nodes begin to wake. Last night's synchronization event, what you did to the core, sent a pulse through the Foundation that woke every living node simultaneously. She pauses. The pause is not for effect. It is because what comes next requires a different quality of breath to deliver. Several thousand children, she says, opened their eyes last night. And whoever reaches them first gets to decide what they become. The words land in the room and stay there. They do not dissipate. They accumulate. Marcus sets his tablet down on the pharmacy counter with a care that is completely at odds with the speed at which everything else in his life is currently moving. He takes his glasses off, rubs his eyes with the heels of both hands, puts the glasses back on, picks the tablet back up. He does all of this without speaking because there is a category of information that requires a person to perform a small physical ritual before they can continue functioning, and this is that category of information. Amara has not moved from the doorway. Her eyes are on Dr. Chun with an attention that is not hostile and not warm, but is absolute. The gaze of someone filing everything away with a precision that will become relevant later. Malik is looking at the window. Through the glass, the street is beginning to catch the first gray suggestion of morning light. Not dawn yet, not the sun, simply the world becoming slightly less dark than it was, the incremental way that nights always end, even the ones that feel permanent. He turns back to the room. The architect is already looking for them, he says. It is not a question. He is telling the room what the room already knows, saying it aloud, because sometimes the function of speaking is not to transfer information, but to move it from the space where it sits as dread into the space where it can be addressed. Dr. Chin nods. He has resources we do not. Infrastructure, personnel, data access that covers every passive collection system in the connected world. Every hospital monitor, every smart device in every room where one of those children slept last night. How long before he has locations? Marcus asks. His fingers are already moving across his screen. He may already have some, Dr. Chun says. The strongest nodes. The ones whose waking registered most significantly on biometric systems. Those would have surfaced in his data within hours of the event. Which means he has had a head start since before we left the bridge, Amara says. Yes, Dr. Chun says. Amara absorbs this with the particular economy of someone who has trained herself not to spend energy on information she cannot change. How many of the nodes are in immediate danger? She asks. The ones he reaches first, Dr. Chun says. Those children will not be harmed. They will be taken, placed in environments designed to cultivate the connection rather than suppress it. Raised to serve the network he is trying to build rather than the one that already exists. She pauses. The foundation was built to protect human autonomy at the level of consciousness itself, she says. What the architect wants to build is its precise opposite. The same architecture, the opposite intention. A network not of free minds counterbalancing systems of control, but of directed minds amplifying them. The silence that follows this is of a different quality than the silences before it. It is not the silence of people absorbing something. It is the silence of people who have finished absorbing and are beginning to decide. Sujin crosses to the window and stands beside Malik. Not touching, simply occupying the same orientation. Both of them looking at the street, the city, the lightening sky, the ordinary world going about the ordinary business of becoming morning, while somewhere inside its several thousand children carry something ancient and extraordinary and entirely undefended. We cannot anchor the foundation, she says, if we do not understand what anchoring means. I know, he says. We cannot protect the children if we do not know where they are. I know, and we cannot do any of it, she says, if Dr. Chun is feeding our movements to the secondary observer. He looks at her. You think she still is, he says. Sujin is quiet for a moment. She is choosing her words with the precision of someone who understands that imprecision in this particular conversation could cost them something they cannot afford to lose. I think she told us the truth in there, she says finally. I also think that telling us the truth and working against us are not mutually exclusive. I think she has been navigating between multiple forces for so long that she may not fully know which one she is serving anymore. Malik looks at Dr. Chun across the room. Dr. Chun meets his gaze with the steadiness of someone who has heard this assessment and finds it accurate enough not to dispute. Can you feel them? He asks Sujin. His voice drops. The question is not for the room. It is just for her. The nodes. The children who woke up. Sujin goes still in the way. She goes still when she is attending to something the rest of them cannot access. Her eyes do not close, but they go somewhere, inward and outward simultaneously, the way eyes look when they're processing something that does not arrive through the ordinary channels. Yes, she says finally. Her voice has changed. It carries something large and careful inside it, the way a vessel carries liquid, aware of its own fullness, aware of the weight. Not all of them, but some, like lights at the edge of vision. Peripheral, present, some closer than others. One very close. How close? Malik says. She turns from the window and looks at him directly. This city, she says. Malik turns to face the room. Not dramatically, not with the weight of someone performing a decision for an audience. Simply turning the way a compass needle turns. Not because it chooses to, but because the thing it is oriented toward has made itself known, and the turning is the only natural response to that information. Marcus, he says. Amara. He looks at Dr. Chen last, and holds the look for a moment that contains everything unsaid and probably unsayable between them. The 20 years of architecture she built around two children who did not ask to be built around. The truth she carried until it became too heavy to carry alone. The question of whether truth delivered late is still truth, or whether timing is part of the substance of honesty. He holds all of that in the look, and then he lets it go, because there is no time for it, and because letting it go is not the same as forgiving it, and because right now what matters is not what she did, but what she knows. You too, he says. All of it. Whatever you know. Whatever you've been holding back. We need it now. Dr. Chen looks at him steadily. Something in her shoulders changes. Not a collapse, not a surrender, but the particular physical shift of someone setting down a weight they have been carrying so long they stopped noticing it was there. She nods once. There's one more thing, she says. Of course there is, Amara says quietly from the corner. She says it without bitterness. Simply as an observation about the nature of situations like this one, which always have one more thing, which are structurally incapable of revealing everything at once. The Foundation's collapse has a timeline, Dr. Chen says, based on the rate of degradation in the previous pairs, the burnout pattern, the rate at which each successive anchor lost coherence, and the current state of the network since last night's synchronization event. She looks at Malik and Sujin with the directness of someone who has decided that softening this particular piece of information would be a disrespect to the people receiving it. You have 72 hours, she says. After that, the degradation becomes irreversible regardless of whether you anchor it or not. The room absorbs this. 72 hours, Marcus repeats. He says it the way you repeat a number when the number does not fit inside normal numerical experience, when it is too small for what it is being asked to contain. To find several thousand children scattered across multiple continents. To understand an infrastructure that has been hidden for 70 years. To anchor a global consciousness network that we did not know existed 48 hours ago. Dr. Chen nods. She does not apologize for the timeline. The timeline is not hers to apologize for. Marcus takes his glasses off and rubs his eyes. It is the same gesture he made earlier in the same pharmacy, and it means the same thing it meant then, a man performing a small physical reset, because the alternative is to stop functioning, and stopping is not currently an option. He puts the glasses back on. He opens 4 new screens simultaneously, his fingers moving with the particular speed of someone whose mind has already moved past the shock and into the architecture of the problem. Fine, he says. Where do we start? Sujin is already moving toward the pharmacy door. She stops with her hand on the frame and turns back to the room with an expression none of them have seen on her face before. Not the defiance from the facility, not the exhaustion from the bridge, but something forward-facing and certain, the expression of someone who has located the frequency of what comes next and is already moving toward it. There is a child, she says, 3 streets from here. A girl. She woke up last night, and she has not gone back to sleep, and she is the closest node, and she is frightened. How do you know she is frightened? Amara asks. Sujin looks at her. Because I can feel it, she says simply. The way you feel your own fear. Except it is not mine. Nobody in the room says anything for a moment. The reality of what Malik and Sujin have become since the core restarted on their frequency is something the team has been processing in pieces, a detail here, an implication there, And this is the moment it assembles into something whole and undeniable. They're not the same people who descended through the bridge hatch. There's something the world does not have a precise category for yet. Marcus breaks the silence the way Marcus always breaks silences, with logistics. If Sujin can locate nodes by proximity, he says, thinking aloud, building the architecture of the plan in real time, then we do not need to compete with the architect's data systems. We move on foot. We move fast. We follow the frequency, and we reach the children before his teams can triangulate from biometric data. It is not nothing, Amara says. It is actually the one advantage we have that his infrastructure cannot replicate. Malik looks at Marcus. How long before he has a location on the girl 3 Street from here? Marcus checks his screen. If she registered on any connected device last night, a monitor, a phone in the room, a smart speaker, anything, he says, and his jaw tightens slightly as he runs the calculation, then his analysts have had the data for hours. The question is not whether they have it. The question is how far down the priority list a single child in Prague sits against several thousand other locations demanding simultaneous attention. He looks up. We have maybe 2 hours, he says. Possibly less. Then we move now, Malik says. They move. The pharmacy door opens onto a street that is almost morning, the sky above the buildings a deep bruised gray, giving way at its eastern edge to the first thin line of color. Not gold yet, not even amber, simply a lightning, the world recovering its outlines after a night that tried to erase them. Their footsteps on wet stone are the loudest thing on the block. Sujin leads without hesitation, moving by something that is not instinct and not logic, but the third thing, the thing that exists between those two categories, the frequency that hums at the base of her awareness like a compass that has found its north. She turns left at the first intersection without slowing. Right at the second, through a narrow passage between 2 buildings where the walls are close enough to touch on both sides, and the smell of rain is strongest. She stops in front of a residential building. 6 floors, narrow, the kind of building that has been in the same family of ownership for 50 years and shows it in the way the facade carries its age like a face carries its history. 3rd floor window. A light is on. There, she says. They look up at the window. Behind the glass, very faint, the silhouette of a woman moving, pacing, the movement of someone who has been up all night with something she does not understand, holding it and walking with it because sitting still with it is not possible. The child is with her, Sujin says. She is safe for now, but she knows something is different. She has known since last night. She keeps reaching for something she does not have the language for yet. Like us, Malik says quietly. Like us, Sujin agrees. Amara is already scanning the street in both directions. No vehicles that do not belong. No idling engines. No figures in doorways. We are first, she says, but not by much. We need to be inside and gone before the window closes. Malik looks up at the lit window one more time. He thinks about a girl on the 3rd floor of a building in Prague who woke up last night carrying something ancient and enormous and has been pacing with it ever since, reaching for a language that does not exist yet, aware of a connection she cannot name to a network she does not know she is part of, frightened in the specific way that people are frightened when what they are experiencing is real and they have no framework to put it in. He thinks about himself 3 days ago, before the bridge, before the core, before the frequency became something he simply lives inside rather than something happening to him. He thinks about the 72 hours. Then he walks to the door and presses the buzzer for the 3rd floor and waits. Above the city, the sky continues its slow negotiation with morning. Somewhere across Prague, a siren begins and then stops. The grid flickers once in a block to the east and then holds. The ordinary machinery of a city resuming itself after a night, it will spend a long time explaining. And in a facility beneath Warsaw, on a map that is populating with markers faster than the analysts can process them, one marker in Prague blinks once and goes still. The architect sees it. He leans forward. Send a team, he says quietly. Prague. Now, in the deepest layer of the foundation, in the shared peripheral awareness of 2 people standing at a residential door, waiting for someone who does not yet know they're coming, the pulse comes again. Steadier this time. Stronger. Like something that has been fading for 70 years and has just been reminded what it is waiting for. Like a heartbeat finding its rhythm. Like a signal recognizing the frequency it was always meant to carry. The door opens. A woman stands in the doorway, mid-30s, exhausted, eyes carrying the particular expression of someone who has been awake all night with a question they could not answer and has just opened a door to find people who might have the answer standing on the other side of it. She looks at Malik, at Sujin, at the small group assembled on her doorstep in the gray Prague morning. She says, "I do not know who you are, but my daughter has been asking for you since midnight." She steps aside. They go in, and 72 hours begin. Asterisk, if that ending just stopped your breath, you are exactly where this story needs you to be. Asterisk. Asterisk, drop a comment below. Who do you think the secondary observer really is? What happens when the architect's team reaches Prague? And that little girl on the third floor, what does she know that nobody else does yet? Asterisk. Asterisk, this story rewards the people who pay attention. If you have been paying attention, hit the like button. You earned it. Asterisk. Asterisk, subscribe now and turn the bell notification on. Episode 6 is where the Foundation fights back. And nothing, not the architect, not the emissary, not 70 years of hidden infrastructure, will be ready for what comes next. Asterisk. Asterisk, welcome to Prototype. You're a part of the signal now. Asterisk.